start. It's hard to find once you know where you are. Why keep you hiding where the sun is dark? The sun is dark. Why keep you hiding where the sun is dark? It's hard to find once you know where you are. Why keep you hiding where the sun is dark? The sun is dark.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Ascended Life Podcast. I'm Dario.
And I'm Kesley. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. Welcome back. It's been a week since our last episode. Everybody that tuned in, thank you guys so much. We deeply appreciate it. As always, continue to like, comment, subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm. Gets this content out there for folks who are interested in this kind of spiritual knowledge and the different kind of subjects that we're talking about.
Yes, and before we get into today's topic, this particular episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsor, the Ascended Life Foundation.
Yeah, the Ascended Life Foundation, for those of you guys who don't know, it's our nonprofit. What we do is, as we're traveling the world, we're in Colombia, we're actually going to be headed to Mexico soon. We're going to be doing different things and helping folks with education, with food, with housing, all of that kind of stuff like that. So feel free to check out our website, the AscendedLifeFoundation.org is going to be down in the description. And if you guys want to get involved, please feel free to get involved in any way, whether it's donation financially, donating goods, services, time, whatever it is, we're not turning anything down. Feel free to get involved.
Yeah, we'd love to host you. Come on down, visit. We'll have volunteer opportunities coming up in the very near future. And really just looking to build a foundation where people can feel connected to giving, right? I'm sure we've all given to different things and it's kind of like it feels good, but you sort of lose that connection. And so we really want to find different opportunities for people to really feel like they're a part of something, like they're giving back in a way that really uses your skills. Like we're even thinking about doing things like, having volunteers come down, teaching English, things like that. So lots more to come, but would love to have you check out the website, theascendedlifefoundation.org.
Okay, so that's today's sponsor. So now diving right in. Today our subject is, Are we living in a matrix?
Are we living in a matrix?
Are we living in a matrix? I mean, it's a hot topic. You see it everywhere on the internet now. Have you seen it? Or is it just...
Definitely. I've definitely seen it. And we had a conversation offline, even before we decided to do this episode, as we were kind of brainstorming topics. And I think everybody has their own definition of the matrix and what it means to live in a matrix. But I thought you gave a really good perspective. So maybe you can share. What do you think as somebody, because I've seen the movie. Anybody who's seen the movie The Matrix? I'm not, for the record. I've not actually seen the movie.
Exactly. So for somebody who's never seen the movie The Matrix, right? When you've heard all of this talk about the Matrix and are we in one, or this world is one in America and all that, how did you interpret that, or what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that first comes to mind is almost like a video game, right? Like we're kind of like players in this video game. And the other biggest part for me is that there's more to it than what we see and what we know. Those would be probably a couple of concepts that come to mind when I think of Matrix.
But when you first heard it, not now, like when you first heard it, what were you thinking that people were talking about?
I mean, it sounded kind of sci-fi-ish, right? Like there's maybe someone controlling the game that we don't get. And we're like, when I think of Matrix, even if you don't see the box, it almost, to me, it gave me this feeling of like, oh, wow, we're in some kind of box or in some kind of system. And we're not aware of the inner workings of what's actually at play.
It's funny you say that. There was a video game that people were trying to tie to Bill Gates and Microsoft. It's 50-50 on whether or not it worked like that. But there was a game that came out, I guess it was in the 80s or something. It was all over Instagram, and I was doing some research on it. And it was literally based on that. There was a video game that was a video game. It was almost like a video game within a video game. And I'll tag the name of the game in this. But basically the game was this. There was a person that lived outside of this world. Now he projected, or he went into this world and he thought it was a real world and everything. But apparently it was some world run by some big demon. And the whole point of the game was, I don't remember. I think he was trying to save some people or whatever. Get out. He didn't even know he was in a world, right? Then he eventually gets out, right? And but then now he's in the real world, but the real world is actually run by these demons or something like that.
Wow.
So it was some game in like the 80s or something like that. They tried to pin it on Bill Gates. I'm not sure if he was involved or not based on my research, but I'm going to re-look into that.
Yeah,
I'm going to look back into that
definitely.
in a big way.
So now give your definition and your, like, when you think of we live in a matrix.
Well, all right. Well, as a person who's seen the movie The Matrix, I mean, for anybody who's seen the movie, y'all know that the movie is about a guy named Neo and Morpheus and a few others. And basically, there were these human beings, and they were plugged into a literal virtual reality. But they didn't know it. They were plugged in from birth, so that their energy could be harvested by these machines. And the machines used the humans' energy to fuel their cities. But it was actually all the humans' fault. When you really dug into it, the humans had made these robots thousands of years ago, and then the robots were making more money than the humans, but the robots just wanted to live in peace. They tried to help the humans tried to destroy them. All kinds of robots gave them chance after chance, and then they actually sent some peaceful ambassadors. The humans murdered them. So they gave them chance after chance. Then the humans tried to kill these peaceful robots who still wanted peace, and the humans blocked out the sun. And then the robots were like, well, we got no other way to survive. These humans are nuts. Let's just use them. So then they started using the humans. So that was the idea. But yeah, when I heard about, when people started saying, are we living in a matrix? To me, it was like the movie. It was just like, okay, well, when people are saying this, are you saying that, we're plugged into some kind of video game or some kind of reality? Now, to me, I grew up Christian. I grew up Baptist, right? So even if you look at it from a Baptist thing, well, this is the only thing I never understood about growing up in Christianity. I now know, and I used to ask this in church, right? If your soul is eternal, or your spirit or soul, or however you want to say it, is eternal, how does it have a start date, right? Like they used to, I at least my understanding was that, we were created and born when we come up out of our mothers. And then that's it, but somehow this person gets to go on forever. There was no idea of reincarnation or any of that, right? But anyway, by the time The Matrix was out, or should I say by the time I had heard about this again, in my mind, it was relative to me because I was like, or relevant, should I say, to me, because I was like, okay, if people are bodies and these bodies are powered by spirits or souls that come into them, and the spirits or souls are from someplace bigger than this, then of course we're in some kind of matrix. Of course we're in some kind of reality or game, or I don't know how you want to say it, or beautiful simulation. But yeah, that was 100% my take on it.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
And when you first saw The Matrix, like what year did The Matrix come out? Like that whole concept?
Like 1996 or something like that.
So was it, when you saw it for the first time, was that like your first wake up to the fact that we may be living in a matrix, or did that happen much later?
Well, seeing as how I was like 12, I was, when it came out, you know what I mean? Like, I don't remember having those kind of thoughts. It just looked like a cool movie with a lot of it was kind of depressing. I didn't like depressing movies because the humans, when they got out, they were living so bad. But to me, it was a lot of cool, like kung fu and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, right? So at that point, no. I don't know that anybody, maybe there were people that were aware of that kind of thing, but for me, no, it didn't hit into this whole, everybody started talking about the Matrix thing. Yeah.
So if you can think back then, not back to 12 years old or whatever age you were, the movie came out, but do you remember as an adult or a young adult, like when you started to wake up, and like what started to wake you up to the fact that we were living in a matrix?
Well, hold on. Now you're saying that we're living in a matrix for sure. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
You're saying wake up to the fact that it sounds like you think we're living in a matrix.
Well, I definitely think there are elements of it, but okay. So maybe we should talk about that. I'll
answer the question. So I don't know factually what we're living in at all. We did the ayahuasca. I kind of had these feelings, and I'd known that there was something beyond it, but I got to see it for sure when we went and did the ayahuasca. That was 100% clear to me at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not that it was ever really doubted. Not that I've really doubted it, but it was 100% clear to me at that point after doing ayahuasca. Now, with that being said, that is a good question. When did I start to realize that? Listen, you know me, I've been studying antiquity for some time. So, reading like the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, studying a lot of these other ancient things that I've studied, even Judaism, it's kind of like a lot of these things, they didn't use those terms, but a lot of these things were alluded to or insinuated to in a lot of these ancient texts that we're kind of living in something that's not what it is, right? So I don't know that I ever truly woke up to us living in a matrix.
Yeah.
Or in some kind of confined space. I just think that that's a really good question. I've never really thought about that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I can think back to like I wouldn't have phrased it at the time of like waking up to are we living in a matrix or definitive answer, right? To we live in a matrix. But I do remember the process of waking up to this world, this reality is more than what we think it is and more than what we've been conditioned to believe that it is. Like that process is very
I can
distinct
say
for me.
that for sure.
Like
Yeah,
I think
agree.
for me, when I started meditating, like that was a huge shift. I remember very distinctly. I was at a personal development conference. And the activity that we were doing was actually about like our values and like our needs as a human. And I remember like my whole life, I like at this point in my life, it was all about like career success. Like that was it for me. Career success, you know, like just different types of like pursuits, achievements. And that was the very first time that I started to open my eyes to like, that's not enough for me. Like I want this, you know, this episode sponsored by the foundation. Like I want contribution. Like I want growth. I want to focus on relationships. I want to focus on love.
You were at something that was going to help you with achieving, and through that
Yes,
you discovered that
exactly. Yeah, I mean, the particular conference, it was a Tony Robbins event, and he talks about the 6 human needs, and the top 2 needs, he calls them the needs of the spirit, and they are contribution and growth. And I was like, wow, I had been chasing so much. I had spent my life up to this point chasing achievement and had achieved a lot of what I wanted to achieve, right? At that point in my life, my goals up to that point, I had achieved a lot of them. And I still felt empty. And it was like, that was the first moment that I woke up to like, okay, there's more to life than just the physical, than the achieving, than this like this programmed dream that we're all supposed to want, like this same thing. And it was a lot of process after that before I really got to a point where I was like, oh wow, like this is much deeper than just, you know, wanting to give back and wanting to grow. Like there's much more to this whole concept of living in a matrix than that. But that was the first eye opener for me, epiphany for me.
Even realize something like that, right? It's like, take away the whole computer side of it, right? Mm-hmm. If you're an individual, like we got our daughter, you know, our daughter just wants to experience and grow and be herself is what I've seen, mm-hmm. right? But if you come into life and you're achieving things, and then when you achieve them, you're not fulfilled, to me, logically, that can only be for one reason. They were never things that you wanted to achieve.
Exactly.
You know, so if you can come into a world at which point you come into this world, and then by the time you're 30, or what age were you? If you don't mind me asking?
I was around 35, somewhere in there.
Okay, so you're 35. This is recent.
Yeah.
So all right, so you're 35.
Early 30s, maybe.
So for the majority of your life up until this point, you had been living your life, doing things that you didn't even want to do. You know what I mean? Or going after.
I thought I did, but I'd never like learned to check in with myself. I'd never learned how to get through that programming. And by the point that I'd gone to this conference, I had started meditation. I had started to do a lot of personal development work. I'd cleaned up my nutrition. There were a lot of lifestyle changes I made that even opened me up to this.
Well, that's my point, though. So you said that you gave into the what? Or you never questioned
the conditioning.
The conditioning or programming, right?
Yeah.
Programming sounds like a computer. Sounds like
right.
So whatever it is, whether you want to look at it as a physical thing or a non-physical, if you come into a place and then there's already some types of conditions that somebody's putting on you that are outside of your own.
Or rules, right? Think about a game, rules.
Yeah, that's like a matrix in and of itself. I mean, rules are okay. Rules are like, hey, you know, don't kill yourself, don't do this. But like when it gets like fine, rules should be there for safety purposes, right? So there's a rule that I shouldn't jump. And if I don't know how to fly or not be dead from this 12th floor, I probably shouldn't jump over there, right?
Right.
I think that would be a rule. But to say that, you know, you need to be married at 20, have kids at 27, and be retired with a 401k, whatever, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of things that are kind of like, who does that really benefit?
Not the individual.
That's the point that I'm saying.
So, I guess you could say the matrix, right?
So matrix. So if there's something on a bigger recipient end, then I mean, we're kind of answering our own question of the podcast. I mean, it seems like there is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so do you remember anything like that, where there was like an awakening moment for you?
David Icke.
Oh, Ike.
There was this guy named David Icke, man. I had never heard this. I was in Ohio. I was sitting there. I'll listen to anything. You can tell me that the moon is made out of rubber spandex, and if you can show me the data and prove it, I'll listen to you, right? I don't believe in like, oh, that's nonsense. How do you know, right? Like if a cat, say for some reason there were no cats in the United States, right? And then one dude traveled over to like Mexico or something, there was a bunch of cats. And then he comes back to the United States and nobody had ever left other than this guy. And he's trying to explain to him about this small four-legged animal with a tail and a bad attitude.
Yeah.
Like, what that thing was, and they're like, oh, get out of here, because the government or the people within the walls decided to tell them that whatever is anything that exists beyond this doesn't exist. Then how would you relate that? So I'll listen to anything. So anyway, so David Icke, this dude got famous literally for, since the 80s. But this guy was saying that our world is being run by shape-shifting reptilians. Lizard people, man. And he was talking about like the White House, all Congress and all this. And I'm listening to this stuff and I'm like, bro, what? Like, this is like in Ohio. This is like, oh my God. So this is at least 12 years ago. And I'm listening to this and then he starts to show all of these evidentiary pieces. So the one that got me, this got me. So he was talking about these Supreme Court justices and these different people that were these shape-shifting reptiles. And he showed a video of this guy's eyes. I can't remember the justice's name, but this one Supreme Court justice, and he showed his eyes turning into these slits, like right on TV, right? So I'm like, this has got to be edited. This has got to be edited. So I went, it was at Obama's inauguration. I don't remember if it was the first or the second one. It must have been the second one. But, or maybe it was Trump's. It must have been Trump's if it was since, well, I don't remember, but it was some presidential inauguration. Anyway, so I pulled this thing up on MSNBC and I slow it down because I was like, oh, they photoshopped that. And I slow this thing down. And literally, my then partner, I'm calling her and I'm pausing. So I was like, do you see this? And the dude's eyes on MSNBC literally turned yellow and into slits. And I was like, holy shit. And then from there, I just started to research. Listen to what the guy was talking about. But anyway, aside from him saying that the world is being run by these lizard people, his big thing was that we're living in this matrix. And it's there to benefit these people and so forth and so on. So that was the thing that first opened my eyes to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. The other thing I'm thinking about as we're sitting here, based on what you shared about the movie, is like the energetic, kind of like leeching, right? Or you called it harvesting of energy.
Yeah.
And I think about that, like even with television, right? You watch television, there's a lot of like fear-based things. Like, do you think that's part of this?
There's not a lot. Everything is fear-based.
Everything is.
Like when we watch our shows for Akasha, right? It's like, answer me this. Like, okay, so everything's equal, right? So there's just as good of a chance that everything will go good as there's a chance that, like, how many days do you have where everything just goes wrong, right? Why does every single movie, every single television show, every single thing has to have this arc where everything's okay and then it just goes terrible and then it comes back up? You know what I mean? Or it just goes terrible. It's like, I think that's a conditioning to get you to believe that and then manifest that in your life.
Yeah.
But your question was about what? Energy harvesting?
Yeah, like leeching energy or energy harvesting, or do you think there's anything like that going on?
Yeah, you're going to get me talking. So I told you about what I thought about the markets. I don't want to talk about that here. You know what I mean? But
we don't want to get banned from YouTube.
Right. How do I say this? All right. Well, in the Matrix, there was these guys called the agents, and the agents were able to like go into regular people. Now that I'm saying this out loud, this is exactly what David Icke said. But in the movie The Matrix, they were like, so you had all the humans that were living in there, and they were being harvested, and they didn't know it, right? And they were living their lives, 70, 90, whatever. They die, and they liquefy them on the outside and whatever, but they were draining their energy, right? Now, the computers or the robots that were running the whole Matrix, they had these guys, because every now and again somebody would get out of line, or the key issue was these people that lived outside of the Matrix would hack themselves in and free people and bring them out. And that was a big no-no for the robots, right? So the robots had an ability. They created these guys called agents. They were programs, and they could literally change their form, but they more or less took one or two main forms, but they could become any of the humans that were inside of the Matrix. They could take them over and become them at any given time. And David Icke literally said that that's exactly what these shape-shifting reptilians do. He talked about these bloodlines and all this other stuff. And I don't even want to get too deep into that, but
yeah, and I don't know that we even need to. I mean, I think whether it's being harvested by something bigger than us, or our fear is manifesting into things in this physical reality, right? Because we know that, well, maybe we don't know, but my belief on this matrix, I started out the episode this way, is that there's more, we can only see like 1%, right? 1% of reality.
It's actually a lot lower than that. If you're talking about your eyes, people speculate that when you combine your sight, your smell, your taste, touch and hearing, that you're experiencing about 1% of what's going on. But if you're just talking about your eyes, it's like 0.001 or something like that.
So less than 1%.
Drastically,
right?
From
so
sight,
I think one could entertain the idea that even if it's not being harvested, energy is going somewhere. So where is that fear manifesting in your life? Where focus goes, energy flows. So if you're focusing on things that's fear, you're creating more fear, you're blocking your manifestations, like that's just a downward spiral.
Entertain an idea is a very polite understatement. I think you'd be a fool not to think that there's other things all around us. There could be like guys or things standing right next to us.
Right.
It's like, all you got to do is look at your cats and your dogs, right? Mm-hmm. Your cats can literally see things and look around. And what really got me is when
babies,
when Akasha was 4 days here, 4 days young, and her and that, people are like, babies are blind, but Akasha's eyes are moving. Mm-hmm. She's looking at the ceiling. I didn't think anything of it, but then the cat comes right next to her, and they're both tracking the same thing. And I'm like, there's something there. Dogs, they can hear stuff that we can't hear, right? Mm-hmm. So humans have gotten into it's not a habit. They were taught. Because humans used to be all about the unseen and tapping into the unseen, and the unheard. But now the West has taught people that if you can't quantify it by their measures, then it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big issue. So I believe there was an episode of Star Trek where there was these guys, the Next Generation, where there was these dudes that they just phased out like a slightly different vibration. And they were following the whole crew around in a ship. There was hundreds of them. And they were just literally putting straws in dudes' heads and drinking their energy. Not saying that that's what's happening here.
Right.
But, I'm just giving examples. Mm-hmm. So for me, my question to you is, it's like, you've done ayahuasca, you've spent a lot of time in meditation and becoming a master of your reality, if you will. Take the term matrix away. Right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think that you and I are on the same page of us being eternal spirits or souls. Mm-hmm. We existed before this, we exist now, we exist after. I think we're on the same page with that, right?
Right.
So from that mindset, how would you define this place? Or whatever this is?
I mean, the words that are coming up is an experience.
Okay.
Right, and I've been thinking a lot about this recently, especially after the ayahuasca experience. If you haven't seen that episode, might be good to go back and watch.
There's two of them now.
Interests you. Yeah, I guess there's 2 episodes. Having been to that place, that space that I was able to go to and see God, and then make the choice to come back here and be in this reality. I'm like, well, why would I choose that? And I used to think this reality was about learning the lessons, right? Evolving our soul, learning the lessons. And now I think it's about remembering. And I think it's literally like, think about it this way, like if you created all this, right? You're the creator. Like how cool would it be to be able to come into this reality and experience your creation like intimately, like being in it?
Yeah.
And so that maybe doesn't answer your question from like a matrix perspective. I know you said to take that word away, but like, what is this? I think it's kind of like God's playground. I think it's kind of like,
what's our playground?
Yeah, God's playground, our playground. Exactly. Yeah, we said after the ayahuasca episode, we were talking about like heaven on earth. And I think if you really allow yourself to see it that way, it can be that. And the other thing is like, okay, maybe this is like this matrix game, right? But if you're going to be playing a game, like why do we play games? We play games to have fun. We play games to enjoy. We play games to connect with other people. So you can know that it's a game and still have fun playing the game.
Yeah. I like that. Well, for me, because of the fact that I know that we're only experiencing like some crazy fraction of a percent of what's really going on, right? So, I mean, to call us blind, deaf, and dumb would be a compliment based on the perceptual abilities that we've been taught to harness. But to be here, you'd have to be able to tap into more, right?
Yeah.
Like there's tons of studies that show that your heart is interacting with a much bigger field. There's tons of studies that show how thought alone. Literal thought changes matter. You know what I mean? There's tons of study that show how words change matter. So it's like, okay, there's a thing called the particle theory. Well, it's not even a theory, but there was an experiment done. It was like in the 60s. Don't quote me, but there was this experiment done, and they were trying to determine whether or not light existed in like a particle or a wave. You know what I mean? Whether it was in a particle state or a wave, right? So all the scientists were studying and so forth and so on, and it was, it was more or less a wave-like form, right? But what they found is literally, because they left the machine on by mistake apparently, and what they found is when they left, and then they came back, and then they went over the mistaken data that was taken while they were gone. This is where the whole term observer effect comes from, is that when there was no humans around to observe it, it just collapsed into potential. Like the whole room, everything just turned into particles as opposed to waves. You know what I mean? And there's tons of other studies that have been done just like that. So it's like that old story, literally, that says like, hey, if a tree fell down in the woods and nobody was there to see it or hear it, did it really fall down? You know what I mean? So I think there's so much evidence. Like when you look at quantum physics and entanglement theory and different things like that, there's so much that shows that the nature of our reality is drastically more influenced by us than we can even imagine. I think that's where this whole "you're only human" thing comes from.
Yeah.
It's like if you're literally actively creating this world just by being here, but then I teach 8 billion of y'all that, hey, you're only human, you got nothing, and then you buy into that, then that's what you create. To me, the only people that would do that or would need to do that is somebody who doesn't have that ability to control it themselves.
Yeah.
And they somehow trick the controllers into it's a weird thing. I don't get it. But yeah, to me it's almost apparent that we're living in something that, I'll say this is what I know factually. I'll tell you what I know factually. Well, let me not even use the word factually. I'll tell you what science says that I agree with, and I'll tell you what I know.
Okay.
Science talks about how our words affect the whole reality, right? I think that's scientifically provable. I don't even like these words anymore, right? But there's that. Science shows how your heart gives off a field, and you ever just get around somebody and get a bad feeling, or or even like if you feel like I'm not feeling the best, or vice versa. There's studies that have shown that when we walk within each other's fields, that information from my heart or from your heart is actually sending off tangible, readable information that your heart's interpreting, and it lets you know, right? That whole study I just showed about the eyes and the ears, and it goes on and on and on. So I think that it's not even debatable scientifically that we are controlling our reality literally hundreds of times more than we can even believe or think. Now, what I know from what I saw in ayahuasca is, based on what I saw in ayahuasca, or when I went to the other side, we would be babies or children, right? That were meant to grow into adults, and we did grow into adults, but we're only attempting to do the things that babies are capable of.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's the current state that I've seen. But that's going to change very soon.
It will. And it's an interesting place to be in, right? Like mentally, and spiritually even as well. There's Akasha.
Yeah.
Hey, sweetie. Mentally and spiritually as well. When you know that we are God, we know that we are capable of so much more, and yet you have to overcome this conditioning first of you're only human. Yeah. That is the process. Like that is the remembering who we are.
Yeah.
It's not a process of like becoming something different. It's like a process of remembering. Like you said, we're like babies. We're like children right now, trying to learn how to use these powers.
Remember though, like, why do you think that you would wipe your own memory then?
Wow. Because like I said, this is the only thing I can come up with. And I have thought about this, but right here, right now, there may be more to it. But one of the reasons I can think of is that if you are the creator, right? If you created all of this and you are God and you are choosing to come and have an experience, would you want to have it all figured out? Would you want the game to be easy? Or would you want to enjoy the process of like really, like I said, intimately getting to understand your creation.
I mean, yeah, okay, I get it.
It's a potential.
But when people say that, it's like, imagine if you went into it. Like I used to be a big gamer. I don't know. Were you ever into video games?
No.
I was a huge gamer, right? And like, if somebody, like, yeah, there's a level of figuring things out. But if somebody put me into a video game with no memory and then gave me all the wrong rules, like, I feel like that's what this is, or at least that's how we've been conditioned. It's like, you come in here, everything I was taught. I can't think of a thing that I was taught that was right. I can't think of one. Maybe being taught. I think people said love each other. I think that's the one thing. But like, everything I was shown to eat as a child was wrong. All of it. Like, I can't think of one thing that was good. All of it. Everything that I was taught on interactions with people and how to interact with people, it was wrong. Everything that I was taught about, and I don't mean this figuratively. I mean this literally. I had been struggling to find things that were actually in alignment with what our nature is. You know what I mean? Like, okay, survival of the fittest, that's cat.
Yeah.
Humans need to be competitive with each other, that's cat.
Yeah.
We need to outperform each other in school, and A is great. Or people that have A's are more intelligent than people that get C's and D's, that's cat. The list could go on and 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 on. You know, the more ladies that you have as a man, you're more masculine, that's cat. You can't have a baby at 40, that's cat. I mean, I could just go on, and I don't know how far you want me to go. So it's just like, it's one thing, I want to agree with you on like the coming to a place and enjoying the ride, but like, okay, fine, wipe your memory, but why wipe your memory and then put you in a deep hole?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it kind of feels like a scavenger hunt a little bit. Like, you're trying to like pick up these pieces, right, and like put them together into something.
But I feel like it would be like a scavenger hunt, right? But if somebody told you, so say you were going on a scavenger hunt, right? But then somebody told you were going to shoot quail, and you're out here shooting quail the whole time, and then you realize through somehow, I don't even know how you realize this, but you find some book in the dirt, but then again, somebody wrote the book wrong, and you're shooting quail, and then somehow you just miraculously find out, wait, I'm not shooting quail, I'm on a scavenger hunt.
Right.
I think that would be a more accurate analysis of what's happening.
You're right. I agree with you. I am glad, and I think it's, when we're surrounded by this much mistruth, untruth, half-truth, lies, whatever you want to call it, it can be very important to look for the truths, right? Or the things that do actually ring true, not to society, but to you. And you did say a couple of things, right? Like, I think you said treat others as you want to be treated. Or
I didn't say that now, but I've said that before.
Right?
Yes.
Like, that's one. Like, I think a lot of people were taught that as kids. Treat others as you want to be treated, or love your neighbor as yourself, sharing. Right? So there's something, like there's some sort of foundational humanity that at least a lot of us
I don't want you to think that I well, you know me. You know I'm not like negative about this. I'm just speaking on this, right? I believe that it's all good, literally.
Yeah.
But even that, like a lot of the people, at least in the churches that I went to and growing up, like, love thy neighbor as thyself, or go to hell. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true.
You know, treat others as you want to be treated. I guess that's the same thing as love thy neighbor, or go to hell. It's like a burn forever. Well, it's like if you hit somebody, but I'm going to burn for you. You used to tell this to kids, all right?
Yeah.
I was 7 or 5. They probably tell me. I remember people telling me, imagine being 5 and you're visualizing, if you don't do these things, you're going to burn. So even, and forever at that, by the way. So you do 40 years of evil or 100 years of evil, but you got to burn for an eternity.
Right.
So I remember being told this kind of stuff, and it's just like, even, so say, I believe and I know that human nature is inherently positive, right? So if you just leave people alone, they're going to do the positive things. Right. You know what I mean? Right. But when you immediately invoke fear and you're saying, hey man, do this or you're going to burn forever, then it kind of takes out that whole pure intention. So even though you have a pure teaching, I think it's motivated by, or I'm not motivated, but I think it's been tainted by invoking fear into people,
maybe,
to take away their initial.
Yeah, especially if you put it in the context of something like religion. I wasn't thinking about that way at all. I was thinking about being a little kid, you know, going to play with my friends, or, you know, just learning about sharing. It was like, you know, I remember my parents always put it very simply, like, treat others how you want to be treated. Like, that was something that was very simple. Okay, so let me ask you this then. So we've established a lot of foundation or possibilities for the fact that we potentially live in a matrix. At a minimum, we've established there's a lot of conditioning, there's a lot of programming that we exist in.
Yeah.
So what has worked for you in terms of being able to see beyond the programming?
I've asked myself that 100 times. There was something in my spirit and in my soul I was born with that I could just never conform. I didn't know that the food was killing me. I didn't know that education was brainwashing me. I didn't know that conforming to different norms as far as dating, parenthood, friendship, I didn't know that those were not aligned with me. Something just felt wrong, right? So for me specifically, I've never been able to just go along with things. Well, I was like, why? It just doesn't feel right. School, I look back on school and I don't even see how I made it through. But like, school just never felt right, ever, you know? And so for me, I think it was due to the fact that don't get me wrong, when you're a kid, there's going to be things subconsciously because everybody's around you accepting a thing, everybody's behaving with. So there's going to be things that hit you deep in your soul that you don't, at least for me, that I didn't realize were programming me, if you will. But for the most part, the larger things I didn't let in. So the bigger turning points for me and the tools that I used was, I can't even say credit for it. It was just a series of events that I've always been the kind of person that, like, if you can show me something and you got evidence to back it up, I will let go of a belief and go with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be married.
You are very good at that.
Yeah, I'm not going to be married to something because I believed it before. And the first thing that I saw that really blew my mind, and I literally grew up thinking that, like, racism didn't exist really like that. The history was way further back than I thought it was, and so forth and so on, man. And I was in this Africana Studies course. I was about 25. I think I've told the story before, maybe even on here. And this guy named Michael Griggs, a professor, he literally was just showing fact after fact how the U.S. government bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma, for it being a super wealthy area with folks from my background, and showing all the accomplishments. And I'm just like, what? Like, all of this stuff deeply conflicted with my identity or my thoughts on reality. And so much of it happened. And I realized that everything I've been told about myself and people that look like me, not even small pieces of it, all of it was I told ChatGPT 3 days ago. I told ChatGPT, I was like, listen, I'm very curious about this. Can you just because I've been reading a lot about this, can you draw pictures? Or I asked her first off, what would the indigenous or the original Israelites would have looked like? And she gave me a physical description of it, right? Then I just said, well, hey, can you just make some images on this? And she made images, 5 of them, 2 men, 2 women. And they all look very similar to how people like me look. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I say that to say that it's like everything that I was taught about myself and people that from my background was a lie. And I'm the kind of person where if an institution, like, for example, if you lie to me, if you were to lie to me, and I was to find out, then I'd have to go back and retroactively question everything you've ever told me.
Yeah.
It was the exact same thing. So it was like, wow, so the government lied to me about this, and then I just started pulling that string, and the whole thing fell apart.
Yep.
The whole thing, all of it.
Wow.
So for tools, the only tool I can say is, I want to say trust that inner voice. But I don't know. I don't even know if everybody's got it. I don't know if everybody, some people just don't, they feel good for going to school. I don't know. So I don't know that I could answer that.
So I remember asking you, this was like maybe 3 years ago. It was around the time we first met. Like, what's one piece of advice that you would give people if you could? Like, what would be something you would want everyone to know? Do you remember what you said at the time?
No.
Question everything.
Okay.
Do you still believe in that approach?
I mean,
now at this phase in your growth?
I would say, wow, I feel like I'm on an interview right now. Question everything. Question everything will definitely work, right? Hold on, that's something in my mouth. Question everything will definitely work. That's a good one. Question everything will definitely work. I just, like, everybody's here for something different.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't want to question everything.
Right.
Like, I just assumed that everybody, back then, I thought that everybody wanted to live up to their top potential of what they could be. But some people, what they have is enough for them.
Yeah. So now it's more about,
I mean, what do you think?
I think I agree with you. Like for me, when I heard that, like I did really, I mean, I respect you as a man, as my partner. So when you said that, I was like, okay, I want to do more of this. But to question everything would have been exhausting and really, like, I was already pulling out a lot of strings just in things that were like falling into my lap that I couldn't turn my eyes away
talk
from.
About you with that whole thing with the Rockefellers.
Oh man. Well, I'll go back a little bit actually, because our experiences were almost completely opposite, right? Like you were that person who could never conform, and my soul signed up to be the person who did go all in on the conformity, and then to feel the liberation, like what it actually feels like to open your eyes. And it can be devastating, right? Like some of these things, like the documentary you're going to speak that you just spoke about. But then the liberation of once you allow yourself to like find your truth within, that's like truly exhilarating if you allow it to be. So that's been more my journey. But yeah, I mean, the very first thing, even before the Tony Robbins event I shared earlier, this is not the Rockefeller documentary, but I basically got the rug pulled out from under me, right? Like I was raised Catholic, got married at 23, like thought I was going to be married forever, and was one of those people who was like, I will never get divorced, like that's a sin, like the Catholic Church says it's a sin, my religion says it's a sin, like that's a sin, I will never do that. I was in a position where I knew that it was something that we had to do, we needed to go our separate ways, and that rocked my world, right? Like that was my first, like really stepping out of the matrix of what I'd been conditioned to believe. So there was that, right? And then there was several other things, but the one that you alluded to was a couple of years ago, like watching a documentary on the Rockefellers about like how they interplay into everything from the oil industry to the medical industry to the farming industry. I don't want to go into a lot of details, but I would just education. Yeah, I don't want to go into a lot of details here, but if people are curious, if this piques your interest and you haven't seen it, it will change literally how you see this reality. At least it did for me.
Wow. We're going to have to wrap this up. This would have been a 2 or 3 podcast episode. I didn't think, because there's still some more things I want to unpack, but it's like, we like to keep these things at a certain time frame, but the positive thing about it is this. At the end of the day, I think we both know that we have a huge creative force here.
Yes.
So even if you are living in a matrix or if this is some kind of simulation, as a player, you literally have the power to change the game from the inside. I don't know any games that are like that. So maybe that's why, maybe I answered my own question. Maybe that's why you'd have to wipe everything and put somebody in the hole, because like in the games, most games, no matter how strong you get, you can't change the nature of the game.
Right.
But humans can.
Right.
Humans physically can. So maybe that's why they have to go so far in the hole, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that even if this is a matrix, because I know a lot of this stuff seemed like a little less bright than the topics that we normally like to talk about, but we got to keep it real, right?
Yeah.
Human beings have the ability to fundamentally change reality literally on a fundamental, like at a foundational level. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, it's all up. All you have to do, at least what we found, is no matter what you see, no matter what's happening, maintain a positive outlook. I guess this is where people come with this whole faith in God. Maintain faith in God if that's what you do, or a positive outlook, or both. And as long as you do those things, this whole world will move around you to whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It really will.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
So I think that's a note we got to wrap it up on. It looks like you got something else.
I think we touched on it in various ways, but I didn't, I guess, get around to the part about sharing like what worked for me in sort of like waking up. Certainly there were things.
It's a perfect place to close. What worked for you?
Yeah, certainly there were things that life just brought me, right? And that was one of the big downloads I got this week as we're making some sort of like life change decisions, direction change decisions, is like, trust life. Life will guide you. Life will help you open your eyes, but you got to turn within. You got to be, like you said earlier, like going within yourself, asking yourself deep questions, meditation, if that's something you feel called to get into, that was literally what changed it all for me. So self-inquiry, but specifically meditation was what shifted everything for me.
Y'all heard it here first. Inquire within through meditation. That's my wife's advice. Good job, babe.
Well done.
This has been yet another episode of the Ascended Life Podcast. Go back and check out some of our old. We got like 8. We got a library up now. We're actually doing this big time, right? So go check that out. The next month, starting in like October, we're going to be shooting this thing from Tulum, Mexico. So check that out as well. We're going to do a few episodes in Atlanta. A lot of cool things to come. Thanks for watching. We are out.
Peace and love.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. We need that today.